Welcome to the Division of Extended Studies here at UC San Diego and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. My name is Steve Clary. I am the chair of the Volunteer Curriculum Committee at the Osher Institute and also a member of the Advisory Council. The Osher Institute is a membership organization for adults over the age of 50 who wish to enrich their lives through continued learning and engagement. We represent over 50 years of lifelong learning at the University of California, San Diego. We hold classes and lectures twice a day. Speakers are UCSD faculty, other local academics, art historians, musicians, and many others. We're also a community of lifelong learners. And our energetic, amazing Jeannie Scott here, the chair of our Volunteer Activities Committee, works really hard and creatively to build this community of lifelong learners with luncheons, social events, art classes, field trips, and many other activities. Every other Monday in these classrooms, we hold a political discussion moderated by one of our members. And of course, nobody at our age is going to change their mind. But this is where you get to come and show your maturity to tolerate differing points of view. The Institute is hosting an open house on Tuesday morning, July the 7th at 9:30. We would welcome all of you to come and preview our summer quarter and consider becoming members. At the end of the program, we will have little brochures available for those of you who are interested and who are qualified to attend our open house. You can ask anybody here who's a member of Osher, people with blue lanyards, Mike and Didi Alpert, Jeannie, Steve, I think I've got most people that I can see, Neil, and they'd be happy to answer any questions that you would like to have. So now, Noah, you ready?
Oh, ready.
My job and my pleasure to introduce Noah Abrams, who will be introduces today's program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning. What an introduction. Welcome, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Noah Abrams, and I am a proud member of the San Diego World Affairs Council. It is truly wonderful to see such a strong turnout here on a Saturday morning for the launch of Engage San Diego. Tough topics, real conversations, and a new partnership between the San Diego World Affairs Council and 1SD. This series was created to provide a space for thoughtful, constructive dialogue on some of the most complex issues facing our region today. So our goal is, it's not simply to discuss simple topics, but to model the kind of respectful engagement, curiosity, and bridge building that healthy communities require. So today's conversation, After Extremism, Building Bridges, and Strengthening Community, could really not be more timely. We are also so grateful for our partners at 1SD and the Burnham Center for Community Advancement for helping make this series possible. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew Blum, Senior Program Director at the Burnham Center, where the 1SD initiative is housed. Andrew.
Thank you, Noah, for that really kind introduction, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to move this just a little bit. I don't want to leave people out. We're really pleased to be launching the Engage San Diego program today, and you guys are all the first. So no matter what happens, no matter how many awesome events we have, you can always say you were here at the first one. As you heard, I'm the Senior Program Director at the Burnham Center for Community Advancement, and the initiative that we're here to talk about today, 1SD, was formed because of this idea that I think most of us share, this feeling that most of us share, that our social fabric, those bonds that hold us together, is being strained. And the data back this up. From 2021 to 2024, we saw a 60% rise in hate crimes in San Diego County. In 2024, 61% of elected officials who were surveyed said they've received threats and harassment, so our public civic spaces. A Pew study in 2025 said only 34% of San Diegans think most people can be trusted. So 1SD, which is now a coalition of over 80 organizations, was formed to reverse these trends, to work on building a San Diego defined not by what divides us, by what we can build together. And we knew that to do that, we need to participate in spaces like this, where we have difficult conversations about the issues that are facing San Diego. And so even before 1SD was officially launched, Catherine Greenberg reached out to us about this series, and we jumped at the opportunity. Clap for Catherine Greenberg, everyone. And as we were planning this event, on May 18th, we saw the horrific shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego, excuse me. On that day, Amin Abdullah, the security guard at the center, Masur Kasiha, the caretaker and founding member of the center, and Nadir Awad, the husband of the teacher at the center, were murdered. I'd like to take a moment to ask us all of us, to continue to keep them and their families in our thoughts. This horrific act reminds us of the urgency of the conversation we're going to have today, and reminds us that this is not an abstract conversation, that these issues directly impact us here in San Diego, and that we have to engage and address these issues if we are to build the San Diego we all want to call home. So I'm going to turn and introduce my panelists in a moment, but I do want to acknowledge that the shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego was very recent, and emotions are still very raw. We're going to be talking about violence and extremist violence here today in this room. If you need to leave, please do. No one's required to be here, and please don't feel you need to stay out of some sense of politeness or decorum. So I'm really honored to be able to introduce my fellow panelists here today, both of which I've been privileged to know for several years. First, Tasreen Khamisa. She's the CEO of the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. The Tariq Khamisa Foundation is a San Diego nonprofit with a mission to educate and inspire children in the restorative principles of accountability, compassion, forgiveness, and peacemaking. For over 25 years, the foundation has partnered with over 400 schools and has successfully reached more than 1 million children. As you will hear more from Tasreen today, much of this work is inspired by her own experience and her family's experience with violence. And that was one of the reasons I was so happy she accepted the invitation to participate with us today. So please help me in welcoming Tasreen Khamisa. Arno Michaelis is a speaker, filmmaker, and author. His books include My Life After Hate and The Gift of Our Wounds, a Sikh and a former white supremacist find forgiveness after hate. Arno draws from his lived experience as a former neo-Nazi to work as an interventionist at Parents for Peace, helping to lead people away from violent extremist ideologies. And you can view his latest film project, Refuge, on Amazon and other streaming platforms. Please help me in welcoming Arno Michaelis. Both of these bios really only scratch the surface of what Tasreen and Arno are bringing to the conversation today, but I really wanted you to hear from them, hear more about their stories from them. So that's where we're going to start today, and I'm going to ask Tasreen to get us started.
Well, good morning.
Push the button, let us pull me up.
I got it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm really honored to be here today. Andy shared a little bit about TKF's mission and work, but I'd like to share a little bit about our founding story with you. So if you could tell from the name, I have a very personal connection to the Tharek Kamisa Foundation, or TKF. It was founded in memory of my brother Tharek Kamisa, who was shot and killed 30 years ago in San Diego in North Park by a 14-year-old gang member at the time, and his name is Tony Hicks. Tony Hicks was the first 14-year-old to be tried as an adult in the state of California because a law had just passed 3 weeks before this tragedy that allowed youth under the age of 16 to be tried as adults. My father, Azim Kamisa, who many of you in this room know, and we're hoping to be here, so I apologize for that. But he really saw victims at both ends of the gun. He saw Tony as a victim of society, Tharek, a victim of Tony, and felt that America lost 2 sons that night, which we see very often still. One to the prison system, and my brother to the grave. And he thought, how did we get here? We had moved to the United States from Kenya because of Idi Amin, and our family had to flee, and we came to America because we thought this would be a safer place. And when we lost Tharek, my father said, I love this country. This has happened on American soil, and I take full responsibility for the bullet that took my son's life. And that trying a 14-year-old as an adult is not the answer. So the foundation was really born out of the power of restorative justice and the power of forgiveness, and to prevent other families from going through what our family had gone through. And we spent the last 30 years focused on healing the community that was once harmed by this tragic event 30 years ago. And we know with restorative justice, we had to heal, the Kamisas had to heal. We know that Tony and his family needed to heal. And we know that community also needs to heal. And what we feed grows. And we decided trying a 14-year-old as an adult is not the answer. We need to feed compassion, we need to feed grace, we need to feed love, and that's what we chose to do for Tony. Even though the state took over, he did 24 years in adult prison for a choice he made at the age of 14. And we said, we stand by this. We will support him through this. And at the same time, we started building programs and supporting schools so young people would not harm themselves or harm others because of everything that they were going through. And we know that. We know our young people walk into classrooms every day struggling. And we're a punitive society, and we are punitive in our school systems too, and we needed to make sure that we would dismantle that and build peace and that culture of peace within our schools. I'm proud to say that Tony, we advocated for his release. We spoke at his parole hearing, and he now is on staff at the Tharek Kamisa Foundation, and we're incredibly proud of that. So peace is possible if we choose to center compassion and empathy and second chances and grace. So thank you.
I'm so honored to be sitting next to you, Tezreen, and it's a huge inspiration to me, the example that your family sets and the work that you're doing, and it resonates with me, obviously, because in my story, it was kindness and compassion and forgiveness from people that I claimed to hate that lit a beacon to lead me out of the most miserable time of my life. From 1987 to 1994, I was a neo-Nazi skinhead. I did a lot of harm to innocent people. I did a lot of harm to society. I did a lot of harm to my family and to myself. And 30 years later, I'm still in that healing process as well. And if it wasn't for people that exhibited the kind of grace that you're talking about and that your family embodies and that you're teaching and cultivating in your work, I would be dead or in prison. I wouldn't be here to share this story with you. Today, I work as an exit peer specialist at Parents for Peace. Parents for Peace has a similar origin story in that this is a family devastated by hate. It was actually the Bledsoe family, an Afro-American Baptist family from Memphis, Tennessee. They had a very successful family tour business where they took people to Graceland and Beale Street and whatnot. And the eldest son, Carlos, was kind of in line to inherit this business. While he was in school, he was radicalized into a very anti-Semitic, hateful ideology. And he went and shot up a U.S. Army recruitment center and murdered a U.S. service member. He's in prison for the rest of his life. His father, Melvin, who passed away last year, and his memory is a blessing that we all carry with us forward in this work. And his sister, Monica, formed Parents for Peace as the resource they wish they would have had when they realized that Carlos was becoming radicalized. So for the past 10 years, Parents for Peace has operated a toll-free US and Canada-wide helpline where any family concerned about a loved one being radicalized can call and get help. We coach those families to create an environment that's more conducive to lead that loved one to a better place. And as an exit peer specialist, who's a former neo-Nazi, I work directly with radicalized individuals, sharing my lived experience with them, letting them know that hate is a toxic addiction, and that it's never gonna lead them anywhere good personally, and it's obviously never gonna do anything good in society. So a lot of those same themes that you talk about in your work, compassion and forgiveness, are really central to, they're the tools that I use at work every day. And as a former white nationalist, it's kind of poetic, and I'm very honored and lucky to have a job where my job is to create more former white nationalists. And we address every form of violent extremism at Parents for Peace. I have an amazing colleague, Mubin Shaikh, who, as he puts it, was a former terrorist in Muslim clothing. And he had his turnaround, and he works with me now as an exit peer specialist as well. We have an amazing intervention team of mental health professionals, and together, beyond the helpline work we do, we also do trainings for frontline personnel, like law enforcement, teachers, social workers, mental health professionals, about best practices in addressing extremism. So that's my story that led me to be here with you all today, and I'm very grateful to all of you for coming out on this beautiful Saturday morning and spending this time with us.
Thanks to you both. I want to start with a couple questions for Tasreen. Tasreen, we live in a time where talk of building bridges, talk of reconciliation can often be criticized as hollow, can be criticized as perhaps even insulting to those who have suffered harm. In your work, how do you avoid that kind of false peace, that kind of we can all get along, why don't we all get along, and go a little deeper with your processes of reconciliation?
I think oftentimes we forget to center the people that have been harmed. And I think we want to show up and we want to help and we feel this urgency to do something. But so much of community building and relationship building is all the work we do prior to a crisis. And the resiliency is based on how well we have built those authentic, intentional, real relationships. How are you opening your heart and your home and your life to others in really authentic, meaningful ways? And so I think oftentimes is why that feels hollow. I think also cultural humility is so important. respecting traditions and understanding and listening to what those are. And just like you talked about earlier, in the beginning, it's so raw. Like if I talk about just losing Tharek and the pain and the grief of when harm happens, in my faith, we believe in a 40-day grief process. And there's a lot of ritual around that because grief is so personal for everyone, and those are the traditions that we have to know and honor and understand so that that peace is rooted in true authenticity.
I'd like to stay there for 1 sec and talk about that rawness, because even in San Diego right now, this is quite raw. And I know that you're impacted by the violence we saw, not just professionally, but personally. When things are that raw, what are some of the first steps toward a process that is more healing instead of more punitive, or is more healing instead of, counter-attacking? Like, what are some of those first moves we can make?
I think you have to really listen to the individuals that have been harmed and listen to understand, ask them what they need, and also understand that they have trusted community support surrounding them already. So bringing those people to being part of what that support looks like is really important. I know that in my faith, when we lost Tariq, it was the mosque that surrounded us. It was our community. It was our spiritual leaders. And there was that's how we survived, So I think really understanding that is very important.
Arno, you mentioned you sort of on the other side of this equation. And I wanted to ask you in the work you do, how do you counsel individuals about that process of asking for forgiveness, that process of being in a place where it's it feels meaningful to ask for forgiveness, and and I guess a simpler way of saying this is what should we be asking of people who are coming, to ask for that forgiveness?
To me, first of all, I'm part of a thing called the Forgiveness Project, which is like hundreds of stories of forgiveness from every possible angle you can imagine. And a tenet of the Forgiveness Project, and for me personally, is that forgiveness is a unique journey for each person taking it. So you could never tell someone who was harmed, like, hey, you should really forgive them, or you should think about forgiveness. It's not something you can prescribe. It's not something you can ask someone who's been wronged to do. But as far as when somebody who's been perpetrating hate, I start at a point of self-forgiveness, because that's something that I've struggled with for a long time, is knowing that I've done tremendous harm to people, and even 30 years later, I'm sure that harm is still reverberating. And to me, I use that as motivation to be the best person I can be every day, to try to honor the harm that I've done. And I'm very fortunate to work in a space where I can get people who are on a path to do similar harm to ideally disengage and get to a point where they're not only not doing harm, but they could also become productive, trusted members of a community. So it's really a matter of asking someone, a perpetrator, like, where do they want to go from here? Do they want to continue to be lonely and miserable and subject to all the hurt that made them hate and harm people in the first place? Or do they want to commit themselves to their own healing process, and understanding that the healing process is not just for them, it's for the entire world around them, because everything in our society is interdependent. So if one person's hurting and what happened to your brother and what happened at the mosque here a few weeks ago are examples that hurt people hurt people. And we need to understand that with everybody in society, but that understanding is most powerful when it begins in an internal conversation.
I wanted to follow up on that and ask you a question, Tasreen, because the work of restorative justice, which you're involved with, it can be so intensely personal, and I think even when we think about it in our mind, we think maybe people, around the table, but we know that acts of extremism, acts of extremist violence impact whole communities. I was involved in some research that looked at the Virginia Tech shooting, the shooting on the Virginia Tech campus, and there were hundreds of cases of post-traumatic stress disorder on campus. People who weren't even near the shooting. They were just part of a community that suffered that violence and were diagnosed clinically as having post-traumatic stress disorder. So when you think about doing your work, how do you think about moving beyond maybe the people right in front of you to broader processes of community healing?
That's a good question. I think healing has to start with self. And I think when healing starts with self and we think about hurt people, heal people, heal people. And so I think when healing starts with self, it opens up the space for those of us that have been part of harm to then open that space up to serving community in much deeper ways. And when harm happens, it does. There's a ripple effect that spreads out to entire communities, especially now. There you feel unsafe, there's uncertainty. It even starts to bridge even sometimes more judgment and more hatred, and people are picking sides. And so I think the work that TKF has done has been, how do we then heal community by lifting up the principles of nonviolence and being a model around representing principles of nonviolence. And that really starts with inspiring others to strengthen their own empathy muscles, strengthen their own compassion muscles, and open up their hearts to really begin to serve community. We've been doing that work through schools. And when you're doing that work through schools, I feel the individuals that learn the most are the adults in the building. Because young people, they really understand this. And they're hungry for these tools and these skills around peace building and peacemaking. It's often the adults that tend to cause the most harm because they haven't gone through their own healing processes. So I think that's where we have to start.
Can I follow up on that a little bit? It brought something to mind. I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've done 700-800 talks all around the world, every demographic you can imagine, but a lot of talks with middle school kids. And I was doing a middle school talk, and I'm up here all hurt people, yada, yada, yada. And this 12-year-old girl raises her hand and she's like, Arno, not all hurt people. And I was like, oh, yes, that's really important. I'm a Buddhist today, and Buddhism 101 is if you're a human being having this human experience, you're gonna suffer. That's part of the experience. And if every hurting person did hurt someone else, our society would be so much worse off than it is right now. If you think things are bad, remind yourself that not all hurt people, and Baruch Hashem for that, because people ideally find a healthy way to process their trauma, and the community that you're building, the community that One San Diego is creating and cultivating, that's the type of thing that helps people process their trauma so they don't pass it on to others.
I think it's a shared experience for many of us who've worked on these issues. There's that moment where you feel a little convicted. There's that moment where you feel a little bit, oh yeah, I myself need to be doing a little better, or being a little more open, being a little more empathetic. I wonder if I could stay on that with you, Arno, that this idea, not all hurt people, but some do. And like you said, 16 years, when something like the shooting at the Islamic Center happens, we all ask, like, what happened with these kids? What happened with these kids? How did they get on that path? And I know it's a big question, but
Right.
If you could speak to what starts to put young people on this path, and also has something changed recently, because it feels a little different now. So maybe given that you've been doing this for a while, sort of what's changed over time.
On August 5th of 2012, a guy from the gang that I helped to start walked into the Gurdwara in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and he murdered 7 people because they had brown skin, because they wore turbans, because they had beards, because he saw them as an other. The last person murdered that day was a man named Satwan Singh Kalika, and he had founded the temple. 2 months after the shooting, Satwan's eldest son, Pardeep, reached out to me. And him and I got together for dinner. We talked for 4 hours. We actually talked a lot more about our dads and our daughters and about who we are as people, more so than white nationalist shootings and how and why they happen. But it came to mind when you asked this, Andrew, because Pardeep did want to ask me, like, how can someone do this? And the next question he had was, what can we do about it as a society? And to me, as a Buddhist, the answer to both questions is the same. The answer is practice. When we practice things, we familiarize ourselves with those things. We make whatever we practice normal in our life. And typically when you ask someone, what do you practice? People are like, well, I practice piano or tennis or healthy things, good things. But a lot of times we're not aware when we're practicing not just unhealthy things, but toxic things. If our commute to work involves a radio talk show where they're like, these people are doing this wrong, and these people are doing this wrong, and these people are bad, and these people are bad. Like, if let's do that every day on the way to work for 20 minutes, half hour, what are we practicing? We're practicing anger. So when I talk about, I think about Wade Michael Page, the man who murdered Pardeep's dad and 6 other people. He was from the gang I helped to start. He was in a neo-Nazi skinhead band, just like I was. The band I was in the late 80s, early 90s was very popular. I would be stunned if Wade Page had not heard my band. He was likely a fan. So I feel like I'm pretty familiar with where he came from and what motivated him. And the point is that when you practice hate and violence, which is what you do when you listen to music that tells you to kill people because of the color of their skin, it can corrupt and diminish your life to the point where nothing but homicide followed by suicide makes sense. Because when you're familiar with hate and violence, when that's like your baseline, that's where you idle in life, things like love and kindness and gratitude and forgiveness, all the most beautiful aspects of being a human being, are not just unfamiliar to you, they're repulsive to you. It's uncomfortable when someone is kind to you. It's uncomfortable if someone tries to show you love. And if you can imagine, talking about empathy, like putting yourself in the shoes of someone in that position, you can get an idea of how miserable that person is that leads them to commit these atrocities. And as far as like what has changed between 30 years ago and now, I left my phone in my chair. My phone is, I'm gonna go get it. This is what's changed.
Yeah.
This is what's different. This is my dog Basil Tortellini. There's nothing bad about him. He keeps me sane looking at his picture. But the point is that these screens are an addiction unto themselves. And they're also a means of practice. Whatever we look at on these screens, even if we're looking at like nice dog videos or cool recipes or whatever, every moment that our face is buried in these screens, we're not engaging with the people in the world around us. And we're practicing disconnection. We're practicing isolation. And that practice alone like even if it's cute dog videos, is harmful. But now imagine that practice where what you're looking at on here is hate all day, every day. I'm a recovering hate addict. I'm also a recovering alcoholic. When I drank, I had to go to a liquor store or wherever to get my alcohol. It doesn't grow on trees. It's not just handy for me. When you're a hate addict, all you need is a screen and a data connection. And you have access to all the hate you can possibly ingest. And that's what leads people to become so miserable. And that's why it's accelerating now, because we're now approaching our second generation of children who have been raised on screens.
I wanted to, I want to come back to this question of online and even sort of the context outside of San Diego. But I wanted to ask a follow-up question to you, Tasreen, because you had mentioned that the kids get it. The kids get what you're talking. But I wonder what you've learned from those kids, maybe about the students that are on a bad path, that are like, what do you hear from the kids about their peers that they're worried about, for instance?
I think adverse childhood experiences are very real. And our young people are coming into classrooms with a lot of external trauma. And we have to know that, and we have to have a trauma lens when we're working with young people, and we've really learned that. When young people are struggling and they're under a lot of pain and they don't know how to manage their emotions in a healthy way, they're gonna harm out or harm inward, and we see that happening every day. And even in a classroom of 30 kids, there is so much division because of a lot of what you just said. Now they're all working on Chromebooks, right? So we're not centering the important dialogues in classrooms and giving young people the skills to even have healthy friendships, right? And build healthy relationships. And so I know that we're hearing a lot from our kids that either they're gonna express what they're going through in negative ways, or they're gonna shut down and they're gonna isolate and they're not gonna know how to reach out because we haven't built that culture of safety, of bravery, of trust in classrooms. And we have to center this just as much as we're teaching math and English and science. We need to center teaching social emotional well-being and compassion and empathy and nonviolence. Violence is a learned behavior, which means nonviolence can be a learned behavior. And we need to really center that in our classrooms and teach young people these skills so they know how to find their voice, they know how to communicate, they know how to be a good friend, they know how to stand up for others, they know how to stand up for what is right and what is just. And this is what we need to inspire in our young people.
I think that both of those comments leads into a question I have. 1SD is focused here in San Diego. As I said, there's over 80 organizations here. We know that San Diego doesn't exist in a bubble, whether that's online things coming at us, whether that's the national context coming at us. We can't fix Meta or Google probably right away. Can't fix Washington, D.C., right away. How do we think about what we can do here in San Diego to make ourselves more resilient in the face of these kind of outside forces? And that's a question for both of you, and I'll see which one of you want to take it first.
You go ahead.
I think first, healing happens in each of us first. We have to work on our own healing. I think that's very, very important. We have our own circles of influence. We have our own families, our own organizations. We need to start there, I think, in those small ways, because authentic relationships are built across time and they're built across building trust. And sometimes we miss that part, we skip that part. So I think that part is really crucial. I think One San Diego, bringing 80 organizations together, being part of a larger movement, joining our voices together like as a megaphone and really centering and listening to the needs of the communities is a very important step. And I'm proud to be a part of that. And I'm proud to be a part of just connecting, like simple connecting with each other and with people that we may not sit across the room with. I think that's really important. Who are we inviting to our dinner table? We may say we want peace, but do we really actively want peace and are doing those active things to create it?
I love that, and I think it brings up the question is like, do we want peace or do we want conformity? Like, do we want everybody thinking in lockstep, and until we're on the exact same page, I'm not talking to you? The gentleman who kicked us off today, I loved where you said like, we're a little old for changing our minds. And that's fine. That's okay to like start at that point and know yourself and be like, hey, I'm not, but what's so important is creating that space that you mentioned to be like, okay, I don't have to change my mind to go here. But I do have to be ready to sit with people who may not think the same way I do. They may not vote the same way I do. Talking with Bernardo earlier and Noah, I was reminded of a thing I did in Denmark. I spent a lot of time there, done a ton of work there. My guy in Denmark is named Søren Lerga, and he's a former Antifa. 30 years ago, if Søren and I met, we would have killed each other. Like literally just tore each other from limbs. Nowadays, Søren and I would organize these community meals they have in Denmark called Fællespisning. It's fun to say, Fællespisning. Everybody say it, Fællespisning. And what Fællespisning is, it's actually a centuries-old Danish tradition. And the idea is you have a community meal, it's free for everybody to come to, and the only rule is you gotta sit with somebody you don't know. And the point of Fællespisning is not to, it doesn't have the only agenda is like if you're lonely, you can come to Fællespisning and make a friend. And you don't have to be like, oh, okay, all the Democrats are sitting on this side of the table and all the Republicans are sitting on that side of the table. It's like, no, you sit with somebody you don't know who they vote for, what their deal is, they're another human being, you're sharing a meal together. So I think like cutting it down to that base level, that simplicity. Come as you are, accept everyone as you would wish to be accepted. Like that's step one to make communities more resilient.
Stop being such a conformist, Arno. Can you tell that Arno's a conformist? One last question for you, Arno, and then we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A. You meant, your work bringing people out of the white supremacist lifestyle, as you talked about. Here in San Diego, there's people on that path. And I think one of the hopes is when we see such a horrific act as we experienced here in San Diego, there's maybe some folks who say, wait, that's not what I signed up for. That's not
right.
That's not it. So how do we think as a community about creating those off-ramps, about creating opportunities? Because you don't know where those people are, they're not going to show up at your door, to create a community that can create the kind of off-ramps we need to bring those people back, into society.
I think the come as you are point is really where it begins. In my intervention work I've been doing for 16 years, I hear this all the time. If I'm trying to tell somebody in the movement, as we call it, I'm like, hey dude, there's a better way to live your life. I'm here to help you get there. I've walked this path, I'm here to walk it with you. And they're like, I don't want to be woke. I'm not going to be woke. Like, you don't have to be woke. All you do is not hate people and hurt people. That's all we're trying to do here. And then I make the point, and this is also a really important aspect of this, is this the self-interest. Like, what kind of life do you want to have for yourself? I do this one all the time. Do you want to be lonely and miserable, or do you want to be happy and successful? Because you will never be the latter as long as you hate people. When we hate whoever or whatever, for whatever reason, it diminishes our own capacity to experience love. I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan. Is it Fred Rogers?
All right.
And he, I'm paraphrasing this, and he said it better than I could ever say it, but he said something to the effect of like, everything human beings do is either because of love or a lack of it. And so everything we do as a community to build community, we need to start from that space. And we need to understand that people who commit atrocities, people who are just unpleasant, people cutting you off on the freeway or whatever, like they're doing that because something's wrong in their life, and there's a lack of love, and they desperately need it. So it's not as easy to be like, well, I'm just gonna go love them and we'll hug it out. It's like, no, but you need to create an environment where love can flourish and where love can thrive. And the thing is when you do that, people who need love in their life are gonna be coming to it like moths to a flame. They're like, I need this. And that can draw the people that we need to help.
I just want to underline one thing Arno said there, because I've heard it from many who work on what he's working on. This idea of just asking the question, how's this working out for you? It's not judgmental. It's just, you tell me, how is this working out for you? And that can start a conversation from a place that's not, accusatory or judgmental, but can bring them into a conversation, if they're ready, of course, to have that conversation. So we wanted to let all of you ask some questions before we get the mics going. Just a couple things about the Q&A. Please keep your questions short and make sure there's a question in there. I've been asked to repeat the question for the video, and I don't have a great memory, so keep the questions short. If possible, direct it to one of us. Who are you thinking about answering? Again, remember, you don't need to be here. If there's questions that you don't want to hear the answer to, please feel free to step out. And I do want to emphasize, you heard this already from Noah, the goal of San Diego World Affairs Council events, of Osher Institute events, of Burnham Center events, is to have respectful conversations about difficult issues. So we'd ask you to respect that ethos, respect our guests and our hosts in your Q&A. Okay. So yeah, who wants to go? We got a lot, great.
I'm gonna grab one of these microphones so
Okay.
that we can have both sides of the room. Can you guys share that?
Sure.
You're choosing who's first.
Oh, okay. Rachel, right here. Catherine, Rachel, right here.
Hi.
All right. One thing I really liked in what both of you had said was kind of listening to individuals and creating spaces and sort of having a shared meal. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that in interfaith circles. And you both kind of mentioned how you leaned on your faith. How might we create that when I feel like a lot of times we're disinvited to the room, right? So like as a Jewish American, like it is sometimes difficult to understand how to kind of build those, but I do think the faith, especially what I preach about One San Diego, is, you're starting to kind of build that collaboration, but even so, I think I guess there just needs to be more, and I've kind of been lost of how to build that when there's so much divide between faiths.
So yeah, the question is, and paraphrasing is always dangerous, so I apologize, but interfaith, faith can be a tool to create the kind of healing we need. Interfaith activities, spaces can be a tool, but they're difficult because faiths can divide. So yeah, how do we think about creating interfaith opportunities to create some of that healing?
Oh, that's a good question. We might not have figured that out as well as we need to, and I think that we need to be more proactive, and I think building the relationships. I mean, all of this is rooted in relationship, and all of this is rooted in humanity. And that doesn't have a religion or a faith tied to it. So I think it starts with building authentic relationships with people that come from diverse backgrounds and having authentic relationships. And then I think those faith communities that we belong to, it's opening up and having others feel comfortable to step in. I think we all have to do a better job with that, and maybe it feels closed still, and we need to like really break open. So I think gathering in person, in community, building relationships with others, reaching out, being active, calling and just asking like that question that, you know, Andy said, like, I'm here, what do you need? You know, and just start building those relationships would be where I would start.
Let's take another question.
Well, I had an answer.
Oh, go for it.
Yes, which I'm not good at being brief, but I'm gonna try to be as brief as possible. I've hated Christianity from every possible angle throughout my life. As a kid, just contrarian, I'm like, everybody's Christian, I don't like Christians. As a white nationalist, I was like, Christianity is a Jewish plot to kill all the white people. That's what I believe. I get out of being a white power skinhead, being a man of extremes, I become a raver. And now I'm like, Christians don't like gay people, I hate Christians. When I became a Buddhist, and I'm like, have this like Dharma moment, and I'm like, oh my God, if everyone was a Buddhist, we'd have world peace. And I wanted to grab people by the collar and be like, have you heard the good news about the Dharma? And I'm like, who do I sound like here? I sound like all these Christians that I've looked down upon my whole life. Maybe I should see what's up with Jesus. So I started reading Bible. I started hanging out with Christian people, understanding that Jesus is the embodiment of forgiveness and love. And I'm like, wow, Christianity is pretty cool. and so that I share this just to point of my own spiritual journey, where I reached a point where my spirituality, my Buddhist faith, makes me not just curious, but inspired by other faiths. To the point where in recent years and months, where I've been having a really hard time with everything going on in society, a Chabad friend of mine turned me on to Pnei Hashem, the face of God that is within every human being. And the commitment to reveal that face of God in ourselves so that we can see it in all the other people. So I think, again, the repeating theme here is you start inward, like hold yourself to your own spirituality first and foremost, and then once you've done that, now you're in a position to be inspired by everyone else's spirituality. I have so many dear Muslim friends who are like, actually, you know what jihad's all about? Jihad is your inner struggle to be a better person every day. And I'm like, yeah, that's deep, man. At the same time, I'm inspired by jihad, I'm inspired by Pnei Hashem, and I'm inspired by the Dharma. Oh, and that Jesus guy. So like it can all not just live together, but really, really complement each other.
Come over here. The young woman in the front here.
Arno, if you're comfortable sharing, can you tell us what was a turning point for you to change your life?
The one word answer is exhaustion. It's exhausting to hate people. And as I mentioned before, hate is an addiction. When we think about addiction, we think about booze, we think about crack cocaine and heroin, but it's well established that human beings can be addicted to behaviors. We accept that people can be addicted to gambling, people can be addicted to pornography. People are addicted to hate also. When you are under the influence of hate, it distracts you from the underlying trauma in your life that you don't want to deal with. It distracts you from your vulnerabilities that you're terrified to face and admit. So I was addicted to hate for 7 years, and the experience of an addict is addiction. If you go to an AA meeting, you'll find a room full of people who are all together because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was sick and tired of being addicted to hate and addicted to alcohol. I quit the alcohol 10 years after I quit hate. But that exhaustion was the key factor that built and built over the 7-year span, finally to the point where I needed an excuse to leave. And that excuse came when my girlfriend and I broke up in early '94. Go figure, but hate and violence and alcohol is not a recipe for a healthy relationship between a man and a woman. And I found myself a single parent to our 18-month-old daughter. A couple months after that, after a concert my Nazi band had played, a second friend of mine was shot and killed in a street fight. And by that point, I had lost count how many friends had been incarcerated, so it finally hit me then that I had to leave or this is gonna take me away from my daughter.
Bernardo right here.
First of all, thank you for being here and sharing your perspectives and stories. It's so inspiring and motivating. It strikes me that a big connection here, and a lot of this is the stories that we tell and we hear in a larger sense. And two quick things about that. One is I'm reminded of Studs Terkel's story about a Ku Klux Klan leader in North Carolina who was very active and over time met this black woman, a fellow community member, who he normally would have stepped across the street from, avoided her, but somehow they ended up learning about each other, and over time found out that they were joined together in their issues. The issues that they cared about were economic oppression, really,
Right.
and they started joining together in the labor movement to fight, the man, if you will, that they both were oppressed by. So they had to tell a different story. The challenge now is that the stories are so widespread by people in power. Things that were once extremist are now being used consistently. What you mentioned in the radio. So what do you see as some larger ways to counteract these larger stories that are out there, almost conventional now, unfortunately, that facilitate this negative relations and problems instead of healing?
Yeah, and I wanna bring Tesserine in on that, and I'm gonna have you answer that, but then also I wonder if you could speak to just what is the role of storytelling in the work you do and sharing. I mean, I had you all start with your story, so what is the role of storytelling in the work you do?
Storytelling has been the most powerful piece of our work in schools and with young people. And I think when we think about like indigenous practices and where restorative came from, it stemmed from that, right? Community stemmed and was built from sharing stories, being vulnerable, leaning on each other. And when someone was hurting, right, you put them in the center of the circle. That's the most powerful thing we can do when someone is hurting. And we've built a society where when someone is hurting, we push them out of the circle. And so I think the most powerful work that I've seen in the work of storytelling is helping young people actually share their heart. And it has built such beautiful culture and climate in the schools and in the kids that we work in. So storytelling has been essential in the work that we're doing, and even centering forgiveness and healing and allowing young people 10, 11, and 12 and stand up and talk about their harm and where they're hurt and where they found healing, and to be able to verbalize that to a group of people has been very powerful.
I want to ask a follow-up there. I have a 13-year-old son, and I think this will be familiar to some folks in the room, and it almost goes to the question about how do you get a 12-year-old to tell their story? How was your day at school? It's fine. I mean, what's the process by which you get a young person to start to share their story?
Yeah, I have 3 kids too, so I totally get that. And parents are so different. Like, the kids I work with tell me so much more than my own children. Like, where is this problem? But it's what we're trying to do now. the community and trust building that happens in classrooms. They don't go from straight to story. You know, it's a lot of like small pair shares, getting to know each other, the teacher and the adults being vulnerable and authentic and starting to share story where kids feel like, wow, my teacher is human, you know, and it opens up space for them. And the more they get to know each other in the classroom, and the more we start to build on those empathy and compassion, and we stop feeding judgment, young people will open up. They really do, but it takes time, and it takes trust.
Can I follow up on that? For me, what is an excellent catalyst to get people to tell their stories is asking them after they've just heard a great story. So I do talks, I do workshops. I've been doing the same workshop for 16 years. I got other ones, but my go-to workshop is just a mindful listening exercise. People are randomly paired, and they spend 5 minutes telling the other person about a time in their life when they were hurt or when they hurt somebody else. And then they switch places. And if I do this workshop after I did a talk, like immediately after, everybody in that audience is like, oh, I want to tell my story now. I want to talk about the time when I hurt someone, when I was hurt. And I've done this exercise all over the world with the youngest kids, or middle school kids, to I did it in Denmark with a bunch of like big giant Viking cops. And these guys were in tears after this exercise because they had shared things that they'd never shared with anyone else. And if you set it up with some really open, honest storytelling as like the precursor, it really helps to get people to open up.
Let's go to the gentleman in the back and then the woman in the front. And then we'll go back to this side.
Yeah, thank you both, first of all. I have a grandson who plays Call of Duty all the time. The two kids that shot up the mosque were teenagers who were radicalized by, I think, of their phones.
Yep.
And if there's 200 or 2,000 right now. It scares me. Because
It should.
there's not enough of us. And I know you're doing things in schools, so I don't know if I have a question in there, but I would love to be the universal arbiter of what can go online sometimes.
Right.
You know, how do I shut down that stuff? But we live in a free society.
So at Parents for Peace, we have a family call, and they're like, little Johnny's locked in his room 14 hours a day. He's doing nothing but playing Call of Duty, or he's on the internet. When he comes out of his room, he's talking about killing Jews or killing whoever. And the first thing we say to him is like, well, how old is little Johnny? Well, he's 14. Okay. Who pays for the internet in your house? Well, I do. Okay. Why does he have unfettered access to it? Well, because he'll freak out otherwise. Okay, I hate to break this to you, but your kid's either gonna have to freak out by being deprived of unfettered internet access, or they can be killed, or kill somebody else. Like that's not hyperbole. That's what's at stake here. As you pointed out, sir, there are hosts of bad actors online. And when a lot of us, when we think about online, we're like, oh, it's just social media, or it's like some weird backwater internet thing like 4chan or 8chan. If I can keep my kids away from that, then I'm cool. It's on Discord. That's a game server where designed so kids can like meet up and play teams in Call of Duty. Like, it's got a benign purpose, but because it allows communication from disparate locations, these bad actors will literally camp out in there, and when kids come in there, they're like, wow, you're a really good shot. You know what? The white race is under attack, and we need your help in defending it. And if this kid is like a kid who's not having a good time in real life, maybe they're getting bullied in school, they don't have a lot of other friends, and now all of a sudden here are these neo-Nazi creeps on Discord going, you're not only important, we need you. You're vital for our fight for our people. We're gonna be exterminated if you don't join us. Like, it falls right into the game the game narrative as well. Like, wow, now it's not just a game. Now I'm like in real life, I need to be a hero and save my people. So Discord, Roblox are the two worst vectors of bad actors, not just for radicalization and not just in a neo-Nazi, but every form of violent extremism you can imagine, and sexual predators, everything else. So parents need to put their foot down and need to get their kids off of screens, and anytime that they are on screens, they need to be supervised. They should not have unfettered, independent access to screens. They should have unfettered, independent access to outside and go and playing with their friends, getting their knees skinned, and coming back. Like, that's what they need unfettered access to.
One thing I'll emphasize that I think was in Arno's comments there is, I mean, all the research on the teenage brain, and that this idea that I'm on a quest, that is what like that is age appropriate for teenagers. That is, so if we are looking to replace the messaging they're getting from those bad actors, we need to think about how do we make teens feel important? How do they make them that they're bigger than something that they're creating? You know, we've all been that teenage, like, we want to, like, I want to save the world. I want to, you know, like, teens think big, and we need to tap into that part of the teenage brain. Okay, I promised that here in the front.
Hi, this is one old lady who does keep changing her mind. But you're absolutely correct on social media. It owns our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I got them all. There needs to be more regulation on the super bad actors. I mean, I'm all for free speech and for different views and opinions and everything else. That's what makes it such a rich tapestry of life. But pure violence isn't good for anybody. And somebody like Mr. Rogers was really good. Can we not get game people to have superheroes, teenage superheroes, who do wonderful things and who have more diversity in their things and everything else, and show the evil of hate amongst one another? That is something that maybe we could get parents to write to companies and stuff and say, I'll not allow my child to buy any more of your products unless you start doing this or that or whatever. But you're not going to stop them from the screens. It's built in. And from your kids, you get everything on a need-to-know basis.
Tasreen, I wonder if I could shape that question a little bit for you. I mean, there are people working on, you know, what video games look like, the content we see in movies, and exactly this issue. Can we stigmatize extreme violence in video games and movies? But I also wonder, Tasreen, I mean, you work with these kids and teens every day. What is the role of video games? What is the role of this kind of content in what you see?
I mean, it's a huge issue, we know that. I think by the time a child is like 4 or 5, they've seen millions of images of violence. So we know this is a massive problem and it's feeding into all of this. I think our work has been really, and that's a road we have to go down, hopefully, and somehow make those changes, but we haven't yet, you know? Power and money seem to be what grows in this country. I think we also have to remember that there's a why behind young people are up in their room for 14 hours in front of video games, and it's become a Band-Aid for their own pain, right? It's another addiction, like you said, right? Kids are vaping, kids are doing a lot of Band-Aid things, and I think we have to figure out the why, and we need to focus on the why around their mental health, their social emotional well-being, their feeling love, and I truly believe that. They're feeling loved, they're feeling connected, they have healthy adults in their life, you know, and I think all of our children don't have a parent that may be able to show up for them in the ways they need to be showed up for. And that's where our schools have to step in. And you know, research shows young people need one healthy adult in their life to be okay. So we have to focus on the why they're escaping and using that escape to help them feel better. And that's the real work we need to be doing.
I just want to really emphasize that research around the one caring individual, like one coach, one mentor, one parent, one teacher. In the youth development research, it's a very strong result. So I just want to emphasize that. Let's do 2 more questions. Maybe you've been very patient, sir, and then we'll come in here in the front.
Let me take this and thank you all very much. And I've worked in some of the juvenile justice issues, but let's take it broader. It seems like in the United States we have institutionalized collective hatred. And we see this with the parties, we see this with the TV commentators. What do we do about that? I mean, the individuals, I understand, but this is so much broader.
We as, when I was speaking with Bernardo earlier, he brought up the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which is a fantastic book. Cannot recommend it highly enough. It's the story of human beings for 200,000 years ago till now. And one of the many nuggets of wisdom in that book is like, human beings are tribal. Like that's wired into us. And so it's, I don't know what kind of luck we're gonna have like detribalizing our species, because it's just how we roll, and we've been rolling for 200,000 years. To me personally, it's about reframing the tribe. Like I feel there's nothing wrong with group identity as long as it comes from a foundation of common humanity. Again, like dropping some Mr. Rogers nuggets, like we all need love. We all have so much more in common than different. And when we can build a foundation of who we are on that commonality, now when we have a group identity on top of that, it's cool. It's not just cool, it can be an asset because it allows us to see perspectives we wouldn't have otherwise. But if all you have is the group identity without that foundation, then we're asking for trouble. And I think, to your point, what we're seeing, not only in our country here, but throughout the world, is that everybody's diving headfirst into these group identities while sometimes willfully ignoring the common humanity that we have. And I challenge myself on this when, if I have my own political opinions. I like that guy, I don't like that guy, whatever. But I go out of my way to meet people who don't vote for my guy, or who voted for the guy that I don't like. And to see them as human beings and be like, wow, this guy's actually really amazing human being. I'd actually mention my father, who has political opinions that I despise at times. But my dad also owns a 5-unit building in Astoria, Oregon, and he charges his tenants the same rent that he charged 30 years ago.
Wow.
It's actually a problem for me and my brother when we're talking about like the will and whatnot. My dad's like, I do not want their rent raised. That is my final wish, and you're gonna respect it. I'm like, okay. So anytime people are like, well, all these people are like that, I'm like, you know what? My dad's one of these people, and he charges all his tenants half rent just because he's a nice guy. So we need to remind ourselves of those little nuggets, and when you look for those little nuggets, you'll find them everywhere you look.
It's a very short question.
Okay. Wait for the microphone.
Oh.
Thank you.
Throughout your life, when do you think your pinpoint? I have two questions. You find that you really were involved with the white supremacists, and when you were able to get out of the gang. My other question, you say that you have people still in a gang and people in prison. Can you tell me the people that you have in a gang, how many people are like you were able to get out of it in percentage? And does prison really help, or is it the worst ending?
That's an excellent question. I begin the answer by pointing out, when you're involved in a violent extremist ideology of any flavor, not just neo-Nazi, but any of the other host of other ones, you got four outcomes. You're gonna get killed, you're gonna go to prison, you're gonna get out, or you're gonna lead a bitter, miserable dumpster failure of a life with no love in it. Of those four options, the last one is far and away the scariest to me. Like, that's where I don't want to be. But as far as like people going to prison, in this country, our prisons are horribly punitive. And it's basically, there's zero, and I'm not saying there's zero, there's a lot of efforts in all the prisons that are throughout our country, but it's all kind of ad hoc. It's not really coordinated. And most people who get put into prison, it's like taking a criminal to grad school for crime. Like, you're gonna learn how to be a better criminal and be more hateful and more violent. Like, that's sadly what the US justice system does to people. The fact is, though, is of those four options I've talked about, the majority are in option 3, which is you get out, you grow out of it. All the guys that I knew from back in the day, when I wrote my first book, there were a lot of really hazy memories because I drank so heavily back then, so I had to like round up some people. I'm like, do you remember that one night when we were at that place? Like, what happened? And as I talked to all these people who had got out to the point where they were cool to talk to me, I realized that it is a thing. Like, as you become an adult and you're like, wow, being an adult is hard. I need a lot of time and energy to make money to pay the bills and to raise these kids. I don't have the time and energy to be a neo-Nazi jerk anymore. Like, that sometimes it's just that practical aspect. And that person may or may not change to one degree or another. Sometimes they'll do a complete 180 as far as how they look at the world. Sometimes they're just dialing down the intensity of their beliefs. And even that, it can be very beneficial. As a matter of fact, when I'm doing intervention work, I'm never looking to like indoctrinate them in some other ideology or get them to believe this or believe that. My first attention is just to dial down the intensity of their engagement with this ideology. And once you're able to dial it down to that point, that's when life kind of steps in and they're like, well, actually, yeah, I'd be better off using my time and energy in a different way.
So we're out of time. I'm going to give Tezrina last chance here, but I did want to just follow up on something that Arno said there that's quite helpful. I worked on criminal violence in the U.S., and there's a real myth about gang members like in for life, and the research shows that that's just not true. It's an average of sort of 2 or 3 years, and then they get tired of it. They want to go on with their life, and so. I mean, it speaks to this question of empathy and kindness that they will come, people will come out. You can't give up on these folks, and actually people are coming out of these lifestyles all the time. Tezrina, you heard a lot. You heard a lot of great questions. I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to sort of leave the audience with today.
Yeah, no, this was a really rich conversation. I'm honored to be like sitting next to you and doing this work. But I think so much of what was said here is that we have to center humanity in everything we do, and we have to open up and expand our own hearts and do our own healing. I think judgment is probably one of the worst things that we can put into this world, and so we need to stop judging and start helping, and we have to absolutely find pathways to those individuals that have harmed and give them the grace and second chance and opportunities, because when we do that, we really build peace.
Thank you. A couple of final words. I want to really thank the Osher Institute and the San Diego World Affairs Council for their partnership on this. You've heard some about 1SD. Please feel free to reach out to me. Catherine can help you get in touch with me, or I'll be around. It's also easy. It's www.onesd.org, spelled out, ONESD.org. If you want to learn more, please do. We are trying to work on some of these issues, some of these creating connections, creating relationships, building trust with each other so we can have some of these difficult conversations. I want to thank all of you for leaning in on what is a difficult conversation, a conversation about who we are as San Diego and what we want to build as San Diego and some of the scary things that we're all facing here in San Diego and more broadly, so thank you for that. Help me one last time thanking Tesreen and Arno. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Noah.
Thank you. That was incredible. And on behalf of everyone, I really do want to extend a thank you to you both for such a mesmerizing talk. And it was inspiring and empowering and insightful, and I think everyone will take something away. So thank you so much. And I think one of the central lessons from today's discussion is that extremism through division and hatred, it's not overcome through silence. You get through it through human connection, empathy, understanding, and that difficult work of building relationships, however hard that may be, and whatever differences we may have. Before actually we go any further and discuss today's conversation, I'd like to welcome up the San Diego World Affairs Council Interim CFO, Christy John, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you to our speakers today. This has been a wonderful series, and I'm very excited to hear all the other conversations that continue. Today, I do want to take a moment, though. I'd like to take this moment to recognize someone who has been an extraordinary face for global engagement and leadership within our community. As Vice President of the San Diego World Affairs Council, Catherine Greenberg has helped shape and strengthen the organization's mission in meaningful ways, bringing people together, elevating important global conversations, and consistently working behind the scenes to ensure our programs reflect excellence and purpose. What makes Catherine's impact especially remarkable is her commitment to global understanding, which extends far beyond this council. She serves on multiple boards and is the founder of Bright Light Volunteers. It's a nonprofit dedicated to fostering global citizenship through service, education, and cross-cultural engagement. And she does all of this to bridge and blend agencies and communities within San Diego, forging relationships and strengthening the impact of our conversations. So today we are proud to recognize her accomplishments, as well as the integrity, vision, and generosity she brings to everything she does. Please join me in thanking and honoring Catherine Greenberg.
Blessing everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. Catherine, you're amazing, as you heard from that. If today's discussion did resonate with you, then we invite you to stay involved, whether by attending future programs or becoming a member or volunteering, or just helping us bring more conversations like this to our community. We would love to hear more from you. And we hope you'll continue this conversation with us at our upcoming luncheon on June 27th. That's going to be featuring Eduardo Schutter of the CBX and Gustavo Solis of KPBS, and everyone's got a little piece of paper next to them, and they can read a little more about that. As together we explore the future of US-Mexico collaboration and the lessons being learned from cross-border innovation. And today we're also offering a $25 discount on that luncheon registration. So if you'd like to attend, you can find someone by the registration table on the way out and take advantage of that offer. We've got an event on July 11th as well for the second Saturday program on poisoned waters, so the Tijuana River crisis and the future of cross-border cooperation. That's it from us. On behalf of the San Diego World Affairs Council, thank you for joining us today and have a great Saturday.